Where are the people who make the difference in the world? Where do I find them? Turns out they're everywhere. You might even be one. They're even in business. Because there's a way to conduct business that makes the world better. My name's John Schieffer. This is The Difference Engines. I'd like to introduce you to Jeff Tanner.
A common good as the most good for all people, as evidenced when the most vulnerable are flourishing. A couple years ago, I began walking Back Bay. It's a place for me to foundationally orient myself. It's about a 2-mile walk every morning, and I pray Psalm 23, which takes variations depending on the day. That process of every morning, the consistency and the discipline of that has been one of, if not the most formative thing I've ever done in my life. It served as a time of lament. There's a healthy justice orientation to lament that is simply crying out to God and saying, this is not right. I really live mostly in Costa Mesa, California. I grew up in Middleton, Wisconsin. I went to Azusa Pacific University. I have a bachelor's degree there in political science. I wanted to learn how people lived, how they operate in life and society and the nature of that. And I substitute taught for a year. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I started thinking, maybe college would be the better fit. Started a master's degree at Azusa in education. I thought, it would be fun to be a college president and teach at the same time. When I was in my master's degree, I realized that in any environment I was in, I was looking at the best way for that organization to be formed to facilitate the mission of that organization. So I was working at Azusa for a while, so I just recognized at one point, feels like my work here is coming to a completion. I was also in a PhD program at the time. I was in communication with 2 organizations who had open director of marketing positions. One was another university, and one was the credit union. I was interested in learning leadership, how to lead well, and the credit union at the time had a lot of what I thought really healthy organizations embodied. So I went there and was promoted into VP role, and then during the financial crisis of 2008-9, I was kind of thrust into an expanded executive team role and effectively kind of operated as the chief of staff for the CEO. I ended up being there until about 2013. The exit from the credit union was really like a profound Holy Spirit moment where I actually was in a redemption church gathering, and I went into what I call a Holy Spirit vortex, where everything just stopped. I was unaware of anything around me. I heard God pose a question for me. What do you want me to do about ECCU, where I was working? So I asked the question, and I heard God say, leave. And I asked when, and I heard now. The financial was certainly in the background of my mind. And then I heard God say, I will take care of you. We are emerging out of the financial crisis, and It felt like, this is the time when it makes sense to stay here. It was shortly after I had decided to leave, but I hadn't left yet, that I was at a conference in LA where Erwin McManus was speaking. He said, what if the church became the human incubator for creating the world's best future? We said, what if we actually took that question quite literally? And we said, what if we organized ourselves in a way where we could incubate good ideas and people and organizations oriented toward the best future for the world, which we believed would be a common good defined best future. Common good as the most good for all people, as evidenced when the most vulnerable are flourishing. And that's different than the public interest, which is the most good for the most people. The common good is realized when we recognize that there are boundaries and constraints that are put on people or people groups from the greed that is highly facilitated by the capitalist system that we're a part of. I think that there's a lot of benefit that comes from innovation and the freedom within that structure, but I don't think it's the fullness of how the common good is realized. Knowing ourselves to lead ourselves is the most important thing that we can do. How the systems that we're a part of usually blindly form us or deform us in ways that we're not aware of. I want to be aware of those primal foundational motivations and say, oh, am I operating in my own self-interest and self-preservation here, or am I operating in the interest of others? So the formation agency is my primary way of advancing that, what I see as my vocation. The formation agency supports CEOs and senior leadership teams who are oriented toward the common good through major change or inflection points. And the formation agency then serves Hildegard College and Fieldwork and Buenos Coffee and Mission's Sake and California Bioenergy and Standing Stone Ministry, and I'm probably forgetting a few. I take on occasional projects with other organizations, but currently that's kind of the organizational roster. I see Fieldwork as a foundational base for good people to do good work together, and that ends up being a community of people who are able to collaborate and work together to ideate and build and support organizations that are advancing the common good. And so Hildegard was birthed out of, and is actually the container within which that Church as Human Incubator is happening. So we're forming entrepreneurial young adults, our undergraduate students who are in the BA in Liberal Arts and Entrepreneurship program. They're actively in a workspace, working alongside other solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, founders, and rubbing shoulders with them. And there's this kind of absorption of the work ethic and ethos and experience that they get exposure to that they couldn't otherwise get exposure to, and then we help to place them in internships with people who are doing that good work. I think a great example of how that's currently taking form right now is, so Hope House in El Salvador was created out of Mission's Sake, and Jorge is the leader of Hope House and runs that, and is primarily doing educational work, just kind of overall support for the community. It's sort of like a community hub where people know, oh, I can go to Hope House and I can receive what I need there. That exists and was kind of birthed out through an anonymous Bitcoin donor injecting Bitcoin into that economy, and then that's ended up having the Salvadoran national currency is now Bitcoin. But what's happening as a result is that Bitcoiners are now seeing opportunity within El Zonte, and it's having an effect of gentrifying El Zonte. So a lot of the families that have lived there for decades, many of whom have been squatting on lands that are owned by other people, but who had moved out because the property wasn't worth anything, are now being displaced because the property values are being elevated. The original landowners are coming back and claiming their property. One idea that we're in the early stages of is taking Hildegard's entrepreneurship incubation lab program and contextualizing it into the Salvadoran culture, into El Zonte, and backing it with a Bitcoin-backed microfinance fund that can support the local Salvadorans in their entrepreneurial efforts, and hoping to empower and equip them to see the abilities that they would have to form their entrepreneurial ideas into products, programs, or services, and then into organizations that can elevate them and lift them up. I didn't realize at the time that that's why I was attracted to it, but now looking back, it makes a lot of sense that what I do in business is largely about how people form themselves, how they are formed together in organizations and communities, the why behind that, their motivations, what they're really looking for in life. That's been a significant pattern and thing that I've been attracted to.